Service today, Matt Stefford was asking if we could have about a dozen strong guys come down here and help move the piano back up on the stage. I believe he said he disqualified anyone wearing skinny jeans, but if he could have about a dozen guys, just kidding. Some of my best friends wear skinny jeans. It's okay. Hey, anybody make New Year's resolutions? Yeah. That many of you? On New Year's Day, my wife asked me if I had any New Year's resolutions, and I've just got a couple, really. The first one is I've decided that this year I want to be taller. And so that's one of my New Year's resolutions, 6'2". That's what I'm going for this year. I've always thought, I just need to lose a few pounds. Really, if I just got taller, I'd be okay. So that's what I'm going with. My second New Year's resolution I made after Tuesday's chapel sermon. When I grow up, I want to be more like Doug Welch. Honestly. Thanks, Doug. I appreciate it. That was a phenomenal youth ministry sermon. I love that. I want to send it to all my youth ministry friends. I teach youth ministry here for the Tuesday tour people, and I love doing that. Love being around this. Toys R Us, back in 1982, made this commercial about growing up. And the jingle of the commercial, they had little children sing. Then in 1996, they remade the same commercial, and they used the same children only 14 years later. I want you to see this commercial, okay? So we're just going to show that.
I don't want to grow up, I'm a Toys R Us kid. They got a million toys at Toys R Us that I can play with. I don't want to grow up,
I'm a Toys R Us kid.
they got the best for so much less.
You'll really flip your lid.
Some bikes too, trains too, video games. It's the biggest toy store there is. Gee whiz! I don't want to grow up, cause baby if I did,
I couldn't be a Toys R Us kid. Once a Toys R Us kid.
always a Toys R Us kid.
Yeah. Thanks for applauding for the video. I think they appreciate it. Cute, right? Kind of cute. And yet, there's just a little part of you that's got to go, okay, it's also just a little creepy. Okay? It's cute when they're little kids, but when they're still singing the same song at age 24, it's just a little creepy. Maybe Toys R Us got it right, though, in 96 when they reshot the commercial. Sometimes we just don't want to grow up. We just don't want to. In the last days, Paul wrote, people will be lovers of themselves and lovers of money. He goes on to say boastful and proud and arrogant and other things. And then he wraps it up by saying they'll be lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. Rather than lovers of God. Doug said it so well when he asked the question repeatedly on Tuesday. He said, will we, for the love of God, grow up? For the love of God, grow up. Our text for these two sermons, this mini-series that we've done for these 2 days, has been one verse, 2 Timothy 2:22. Flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and hope, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on him out of a pure heart. Pursue righteousness. Faith, love, and peace. Righteousness, a right relationship with God. Faith, a personal surrender to God and conduct that is inspired by the surrender. Love, charity, seeking the best in others, no matter what their response is to you. And peace, pursuing harmony. Harmony in relationships with individuals as well as with nations, to pursue that. Pursue these as though you are pursuing a life's calling. Let nothing deter you. Let nothing get in the way. Keep pursuing. It's a continuous act. It's not a one-time thing. To pursue the life of Jesus is a decision. It's a decision that has to be made. It's not simply going to happen or take place because you're part of a church or because you're part of a Christian school. It's a decision that you have to make. It's not something that happens that doesn't immediately overtake your mind, body, and soul once you come out of the waters of baptism. It's a decision. Dallas Willard writes this in The Great Omission. He says, the disciple is one who, intent upon becoming Christ-like and so dwelling in his faith and practice, systematically and progressively rearranges his affairs to that end. It's not a rubbing of the genie's lamp during our prayers. Our short prayers where we say, I wish I was more like Jesus. I wish I was more like Jesus. I wish I was more like Jesus. And poof, you're still you. Because it's not in the wishing, it's in the pursuing that we become more like Christ. It's in the following. And the pursuit will cost you. Just as Jesus said that there's a cost to being a disciple, it will cost to pursue righteousness, love, faith, and peace. It will mean, to use Willard's words, to systematically and progressively rearrange my affairs to that end. Hey, wait a second. Wait just a second. That sounds a little bit like works to me. Okay. It is. But I'm not talking about working for your salvation. I'm talking about the pursuit of knowing Jesus, the pursuit of holiness. Long ago, Tim Hansel wrote a book. It was called Holy Sweat. And the byline of that book was, holy reminds us of our calling. Sweat is what it takes to get there. The pursuit. The pursuit. The writer of Hebrews, Paul, Apollos, some other church leader we don't really know. We want to come up with a name. I like to say his name was Kenny. The writer of Hebrews, Kenny, doesn't that just sound good? The writer of Hebrews, Kenny, speaks of endurance and perseverance in the race marked out for us. I like the phrase in chapter 12, verse 4, where he articulates this idea that his readers had not yet in their struggle against sin resisted to the point of shedding blood. Years ago, I heard a sermon where a pastor was talking, and he used this text, and then after he read it, he went back to it and said this: resisting to the point of shedding blood? I don't think so. Most of us haven't resisted to the point of breaking a sweat. The pursuit of following Jesus will not be easy. It's a pursuit that it will take all that we have and all that we are. It's interesting to me that in the midst of Paul's warnings about foolish talk and controversies and fleeing youthful lusts, he says, pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace. Sometimes the only way to run from something wrong is to run to something right. That's the only way we can do it. John Bunyan, born in 1628, lived until 1688. Around the age of 28, he began preaching in Bedford, England. But because he wasn't licensed by the Church of England, he was imprisoned for conducting these public church services, not authorized by the church. While he was in prison, he wrote a book that's been translated now into over 200 languages. It's never been out of print. And yet I'm telling you this because I'm guessing that some of you have never seen it or never heard of it. It's a book called Pilgrim's Progress, and it's an allegory about a man who longs for life, a new and clean life, a start over. And he knows to stay where he is will most certainly mean death, and so he knows he must move forward. And so against the protests of family and friends, he begins his quest. And Bunyan writes that in his dream, this man begins to run. That's a good place to start. But he hadn't run far from his own door when other characters in the story began trying to get him to come back, yelling out all kinds of threats and excuses for him not to go. But the man was determined. And so he put his hands over his ears and began to run forward as fast as he could, just yelling out the words, life, life, eternal life. Sometimes it's not enough to run from evil. We've got to run to good, to run to righteousness. Enough of the foolish talk. Enough. You're wasting my time. It's really of very little benefit, if any at all. Pursue harmony with others. Pursue faith. Pursue love. In November, 18 youth ministry students and Bob Whitty and I got to attend a conference in Nashville, a youth workers conference. And one of the speakers was a man named Bob Goff. And Bob is a lawyer, he's an author, and he is an extreme extrovert. He will stop and talk to anyone, evidenced by this photo here. He just loves people, and he wrote this book called Love Does. And the concept behind the book is that the idea of pursuing love, to love God, to love others, to love our friends, to love our neighbors, to love our families, to love strangers, to love even enemies. And he makes this assumption in his book that we, the followers of Jesus, we've got a pretty good idea of what it means to love others. He says, we really don't need another Bible study on loving others. We just need to do it. And then in his book, he just gives one story after another, one adventure after another of his journey in loving other people. And it's really actually pretty amazing. It's the idea of stop talking and start doing. Stop talking and start pursuing Jesus. Tim Keller has a sermon titled Come and See. And in it, he used this analogy that really spoke to me on what it means to live in the lordship of Jesus, to pursue him every day. He said there's a lot of people who like Jesus. There's a lot of people who believe in Jesus. There's a lot of people who like the teachings of Jesus, and that's good. That's good. But it's not the same as pursuing a relationship with Jesus. Keller goes on to say, imagine you really like the writings of John Doe. You've been influenced by the writings of John Doe. You recommend the readings of John Doe. They've been important in your life. They've been something that's really helped you. That's good. But now let's imagine that you were to marry John Doe. Or guys, you can change that to Jane Doe. That might help a little bit. But you're to marry John Doe. You know what? Now that changes everything. That changes everything. When you're single and you were hungry for a pizza, you went and got a pizza. Or you called and you ordered a pizza. Now you're married and you want a pizza, and you've got to check with the other person and find out, do they want a pizza? And if they do, what do they want on their half of the pizza? And is it okay if I go get a pizza? The relationship changes everything. Because now you're married to that person. He's not just a distant author whose writings have influenced you. You are in a relationship with him. And following Jesus, pursuing him, means you will follow even when you don't completely understand exactly some of the things he's trying to tell you. Even when you don't want to do some of the things that he's telling you. Even when you disagree with some of those things. It means you follow even when you'd rather do something other than what Jesus wants. Keller concluded with this statement. He says, if you don't have a Jesus that is at times difficult to follow, you're really only following your self-made idea of who Jesus is. You're not following Jesus. It's not real. And it's certainly not personal. How will we spend our life? What will we spend our life pursuing? What is it that people deem worthy of a life's pursuit? Consider some of these things: athletic achievement, status, fame, money, beauty, academia, so many things. Think about this with me. Name in your mind, list the last 10 Super Bowl MVPs. Can you do that? Yeah, I can't. How about the last 10 Heisman Trophy winners? I know some of you are going, oh, okay, you know. How about the 10 wealthiest people in the United States? How about, can you name 10 gold medalists from the 2010 Winter Olympics? Can you name 10 winners of the Nobel Peace Prize? 10 winners of the Pulitzer Prize? How about 10 winners of the Miss America pageant? How about naming one? God. Idaho. No, that's not a name. Now, let's suppose that we gathered all of those winners together in one room. What would they have in common? Well, there might be a few things. They're all breathing. They may have a few things in common. But I can tell you one thing for certain that they all have in common. That is that one day they will all stand before God on Judgment Day. And on that day, what will their prizes and their crowns and the tiaras and their trophies and their money and their degrees and their diplomas and their achievements and recognitions, what will they all mean on that day? I've heard it said, my regret is not that I won't effectively climb the ladder of success. Instead, it's that I would effectively climb it and find out at the end of my days the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall all along. What am I pursuing? I think that life perspective is best gained in death. You can hear it in funeral messages. Sometimes you can experience it in hospital waiting rooms. You can understand it when you're walking alone through a cemetery. There's an old overgrown cemetery in the woods on the outskirts of Como, Colorado. Como is an old mining town who was in its heyday in the early 1900s, probably had a population of just a little over 400. Now the town hovers around 20. The town is in the mountains, an elevation of 10,000 feet. The cemetery is in the woods, surrounded by barbed wire with an iron gate at the entrance. Trees and tall weeds have sprouted up throughout all of the stones, the weathered tombstones. They'll range from the mid-1800s to the early 1900s. There are some that are even more current than that, actually. Most of those buried there were from those who had come to live there during the mining days, the silver mines and the iron mines of Colorado in the mid-1800s. Too many of the stones belong to little children who died from the 1861 smallpox epidemic that swept through the area. I visited this cemetery probably 8 times, 9 times in the last 5 years. When I work at this camp in Como, Colorado, and I'll take middle schoolers and high schoolers on a hike through the woods, and we'll arrive at this place, and I'll allow them some time to walk through the stones and to read them, and then give them some time to sit outside the cemetery and have a quiet time and journal a little bit. And I do that in hopes of helping them gain in life perspective. Can I tell you something? Most of you probably know nothing or very little about your great-grandparents. Some of you can't even tell me their names. No disrespect intended here. I'm simply pointing out that chances are pretty slim that less than 50 years after your own death, very few people will have any recollection that you were here on this earth. I'm just a ray of sunshine right now, aren't I? But it's true. Towards the end of last semester, I encouraged my youth ministry class to take the end-of-life survey, to sit and ask this question: at the end of my life, what will really matter, and how can I best invest in that? The end-of-life survey, just a good thing to do in your quiet time when you're journaling. How then can I run to Jesus? We know it's going to be difficult, it always has been, to pursue Jesus. There are so many pitfalls along the way. Perhaps that's why Paul finishes his thought with these words: along with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart. Pursue righteousness along with those who are faithful. Righteousness, faith, love, and peace must be sought in the company of others who call on the Lord. The Christian should never seek a detached life, a life that is aloof from fellowship. John Wesley put it this way. He said, "A man must have friends or make friends, for no one ever went to heaven alone." The poet W.H. Auden said it so bluntly: "We must love others or die." One of the primary ways to pursue Jesus is through relationships. You can go to church alone, you can study the Word alone, you can do spiritual disciplines, some of them alone. But without friends who are pursuing Jesus alongside you, you run the risk of failure. Churches have turned to small group ministries not as the latest innovation for church growth, but because they realize that pursuing Christ alone is seldom effective. If a person hears about how wonderful your church is and decides to attend there, that's great, but if they never really plug in to some other people, chances are they'll stop attending. And so that's why we need other people. We need a community of believers to spend time with. Persons who are farther along in their faith than you are, so that you can learn from them. Persons who are walking the same path as you are, that are along the same side as you, so that you can grow in accountability with these people, and you can learn and doubt and question and experience your walk with God with them. And people who are behind you in their faith, so you can reach back and help them, so you can teach them, so that you can help them and study for them. And in doing that, you'll actually grow yourself. We need that fellowship. Hey, do you want to grow up in your faith? Do you want to grow and mature spiritually? Then hang out with people whose faith is more spiritual than yours. Hang out with people whose life is more on track with God than yours. Do you want to make wise decisions? Stop hanging out with people who make stupid decisions and do stupid things. It just makes sense. Surround yourself with people whose lives are worth emulating, people who are pursuing a right relationship with Jesus. One of the things that I get to do here is coach the men's soccer team. And I got to tell you, they are a ton of fun. They are. I don't want to leave this picture up too long. Let's go to the serious one. Yeah, there we go. But honestly, I love these guys, and we have a great time together. They crack me up. They play hard. More than that, though, they consistently attempt to honor God in their game. And I appreciate that about them. And part of that is a team decision. We will pursue God along with others, teammates, coaches, who are fighting daily to pursue God, to pursue righteousness. You know, in coaching, sometimes I have to remind myself when we're playing other teams that I can't expect non-Christians to act like Christians. I can't expect non-Christians to act like they should live under the lordship of Jesus. But I'll tell you what, I do have higher expectations of Jesus followers. We will pursue a right relationship with Jesus, pursuing a living faith, a giving love, a harmony with others, along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. A pure heart. The whole idea that is a totality of a man's love and affection. Without purity of heart, there cannot be noble character. A pure heart is an undivided heart. So with that said, let me ask you a penetratingly personal question. Right now, I just want you to think about the people that you spend time with. The people that you seek to befriend, the people that you seek approval from, those whom you would date, those whom you might fall in love with. What are their greatest loves? What is it that they are pursuing? Where is their heart? Are they lovers of self or lovers of God? Theologian and martyr Dietrich Bonhoeffer reminds us of this in Life Together. He says, Christian community is simply and solely what Jesus Christ has done for you and for me. For Jesus Christ alone is our unity. He is our peace. Through him alone do we have access to one another. The problem, Bonhoeffer goes on to write, says, is that often we try to build community rather than accept it. Oh, my word, I know that. I'm the small groups guy. I'm the one trying to build community. You know what? I can put you in a small group, but I can't make you like each other. We give it a try. I can't force you to enjoy hanging out together. But all we can do through life groups is give you one more opportunity to walk this journey along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. Community is not an ideal that we must create and develop. It's a reality that's given us through Jesus Christ, in which we get to participate. It's as though God is saying, I have a gift for you. I have a gift for you, and it's something that you can use for the rest of your life. It's something that will be more helpful than you can imagine. You can use it every day. It's invaluable. I call this gift church. Sometimes I call it the body, sometimes I call it family, but it's here for you to love and to be loved, to encourage and to be encouraged, to care for and to be cared for. By the way, in your pursuit of Jesus, you'll fail miserably without it. Will you, for the love of God, grow up? Let me just wrap up by giving you a short story and one more scripture. The final exam in my youth ministry classes is a 15-minute appointment where each one of the youth ministry students comes to my office and we sit down and we go over their portfolio, their notebook of all their assignments, and we go over their resume and we talk about youth ministry. And it's pretty much, I hope anyway, an encouraging time for me to just say, hey, here's some things that I see in you, and I hope that you're able to do this with your life. And we just talk back and forth about the pursuit that they have in the career of youth ministry. But every now and then, it's not a happy time. I still remember not long ago, after reviewing a student's notebook and resume, I simply said this, you know what? I need to hear you say something. I need to hear you say these words. I will work hard. I need to hear you say that because I don't see it in your assignments. I don't see it in your classroom lack of participation. I'm not seeing it in the conversation. I'm not hearing it in the conversation. I need to hear that. I gave him an opportunity to speak, and you know what? He never said those words. He just made one rambling excuse after another. couple weeks ago, Doug Welch and I got together at the Mecca of fast food restaurants, Chick-fil-A, to work on these messages just a little bit, just to talk it over a little bit. And one of our thoughts was that at the conclusion, we need to ask you to make a defining and clear decision. We need to say, I need to hear you say something. And you know what? We talked about not letting you leave until you made the decision, but we're not going to bar the door. Doug's not back there right now chaining the doors. We're not going to strap you to your seats until you make some kind of defining decision. But it's not going to stop me from asking the question again. Will you dedicate yourself to flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, love, faith, and peace along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart? Why? So that one day you can say, along with the Apostle Paul, I have finished the race. I have fought the fight. I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me a crown of righteousness, the very crown that I've been pursuing all along. And it will be awarded to me on that day by Jesus himself, the righteous judge, but not only to me, but to all who have longed for his appearing, to all those others who have called on the Lord on a pure heart, to all those others who have gone along with me in that pursuit. Will you, for the love of God, grow up? And so the way we'd like to end is just to give you a few moments of silence. For you to talk to God. I don't need to hear the answer to the question, but I think he does. So I'm just going to give you a few moments of silence for you to talk to him. And after a few moments, I'll say amen. We'll be dismissed.